All right, welcome back. Thank you for letting me use a hairdryer. This is only 5 minutes after the last episode, and this is the most idiosyncratic, or the most peculiar, the most unique part of Chris Payne's technique, and it is wiping off. This was oil paint with a lot of terpenoid applied to the whole painting, creating a gray tone, cool gray, and I dried it with a hairdryer, and now we come in with a kneaded eraser and wipe off whatever we want to be light in tone, light in color. Now, I will say first of all that all I've ever seen that CF Payne has done is he says kneaded eraser. I don't know if he limits himself to a kneaded eraser, but I'm not going to. So for details, I use a couple things. One is even a little electric eraser here, little battery powered thing for really cleaning off small areas. There you go, Lake. Look at those eyes. They just popped, didn't they? So that I'm using 3 tools then. And again, Chris only lists kneaded eraser as what he uses at this point. I don't know if that's literal or if he means mostly kneaded eraser. You can do some details. Okay, now again, let me talk again for you students, for you art students. Why? Why are we doing all this? This is the second time we've covered the entire painting with a tone and are lifting it out. If we're going to take it all off, why did we put it on in the first place? Or I guess to be a little bit more precise, why didn't we just brush this grayish tone that I'm doing right now? Why didn't we just brush it on the areas that we wanted? In other words, why are we painting negative instead of positive? And well, the broad philosophical answer, or I'm not, philosophical is not the right word, but the broad concept is a lifting out technique is much quicker than a putting on technique. It took me 3 minutes to cover the whole thing, 5 minutes to dry it with a hairdryer, and it will take me much less time to lift out what I want white than it would to come in here with, you know, with a small brush and paint this gray tone like this. Now I'll be doing plenty of that later. that after this stage comes tongue, what I call tongue painting. If you don't know that term, it's a term of derision that in my normal painting, in my oil painting, which is much looser and impressionistic than this, tongue painting is anathema. Tongue painting is something you do not want to do. It's tight, and most people are trying to get away from tight. Now, I'm happy to say now with this layer, and let me see how much texture you can see here. Let me see how close I can get to the camera. Not bad. Yeah, do you see this texture here, this kind of speckly? That is first of all, that looks like CF Payne illustration. Let me show you some CF Payne illustrations again, really quick. It has, these are just, of course, cheap prints off my printer, but it has, let me find another one. It has that speckly texture. Here's a good one. Let's look at this man's cheek. Whoops. Or especially where his mustache is. Can you see that speckly on his guitar down here? Can you see there? You can see it really well there. See all that speckly stuff? That's not. He didn't achieve that by speckling like with a toothbrush or something like that. He got that mostly by this technique, and I don't know what it is. It's a combination of, first of all, cold press illustration board with a workable fixative sprayed all over it, and then acrylic paints, then watercolor paints, then oil paints, lifted off with eraser, creates this delightful texture. And it is a delightful texture. It's one of the things that sets apart CF Payne's illustrations from many others. Our eyes just get a kick out of texture. Our eyes get a kick out of seeing stuff. And this sky is already so much more interesting than it was a little while ago, yesterday to be exact. So much more interesting than it was yesterday when it was just acrylic blue paint applied to the sky. So since I applied the acrylics yesterday, the blue sky has had two treatments, two things done to it. One, watercolor wash over the whole thing, then lifted out with a damp brush. And then second, an oil wash, this time being lifted out with a kneaded eraser. And yes, I would love to know how in the world C.F. Payne discovered this technique right here. This is the one that is unique, and if he learned it from somebody else, I'd love to know that. My guess is that he learned it himself. I'm an illustrator myself. I know what it's like to be kind of a bit of a mad scientist in your studio. You say to yourself, I wonder what would happen if I tried this, and that is how most good art discoveries are made. Now, some people have asked me, understandably, in fact, I've asked myself, so how archivally stable is a painting done in this way? Because we have concerns, don't we, that an oil paint applied with turpenoid, first of all, which is not supposed to be a medium at all, not designed to be used as a medium. How does turpenoid stand up to time? And not only that, it gets worse. After this layer, we're going to spray a rough, very rough fixative. Lacquer matte is the, if you want to Google lacquer matte, is the medium, the fixative I'm going to use. And then we do acrylics and color pencil on, and that breaks the rule completely. To do acrylics on top of oil is completely verboten. That's way outside the boundaries. And yet that's what Chris has been doing for years. And my guess is that archivally it's going to be okay. And by okay I mean 100 years okay. I have we can't conceive of 200 or 300 years. So I wouldn't guarantee it for that, but my guess is that using the materials he's using, that the illustrations will be pretty stable for quite a while. By the way, I don't know if you've heard this or not, but I heard rumor of this, and then I Googled it, looked it up, and sure enough, the people at the Norman Rockwell Museum, where is that? Rockport? I don't know, Connecticut. Anyway, New England somewhere, I forget now. The people at the Norman Rockwell Museum are tearing their hair out because many of Norman Rockwell's paintings are not standing the test of time. He used often very inferior products, and they're just decaying before their eyes. And once the acid is, that's the big enemy, once the acid is released in a substrate, in a paper, and by the way, this is good paper, this should last a couple hundred years if it's kept in a cool, dry place, but once the acid gets into the substrate, it's very, very, very difficult to, as I understand it, to infuse an alkaline remedy into that environment and stop the corruption. So anyway, very sad that Norman Rockwell's paintings, too many of them, are disappearing. Again, as an illustrator, I certainly understand how things like that can happen, especially back in the 40s and 50s and 60s. Nowadays, I mean, first of all, we have the internet, right? So all the best art supplies in the world are right there at our fingertips. It was not the case in the 50s, 60s, even the 70s. Of course, no internet till a long time after that. But now also we just have a number of good art supply outlets all over the country. Dick Blick, Jerry's Artorama, Utrecht, Hobby Lobby, even Michael's. Last weekend I was in Long Island painting a wedding, and I flew up there, and you can't fit a 24 by 36 inch canvas on the airplane. So once I landed at LaGuardia, one of my first tasks was to find an art supply store, and I googled Dick Blick and so on and so on and so on. And I ended up going to a Michael's craft store, which I'll just say they had what I needed. They just had what I needed. So yahoo for that. So anyway, back in when Norman Rockwell was doing his work, there was no Dick Blick. There were art supplies, but not as ubiquitous as they are today. Nothing close to that. So we can see why under the gun, under the pressure of a deadline, Norman Rockwell would cut corners to get the job done. That's what illustrators do. The name of being an illustrator is get the job done in time. Anyway, that was a long detour, wasn't it? I believe, though, I think that the layers that Chris Payne has invented here, I think that they are fairly archivally stable. So I'm not terribly worried about it. I hope that you can see already the charm. This pencil is 90% finished as far as painting goes. 10% of details and touch-up I'm going to apply to it in the next layer. But it's very nearly finished, and it already has a very nice, realistic feel to it. Of course, realism in quotes, it has this famous, I'll say famous CF Payne texture about it, but the whole painting has that texture. So our eye, our brain, our mind receives it as like, oh, this is a very textured world, and then it doesn't bother us. Whereas if this texture just existed on one area, it would irritate us. It's like, ooh, that ain't right. Part of this, the tree that the owl is sitting in is dead. That just gives me an excuse to do fun, interesting textures. That's the only reason for having these branches up here be dead, just because the dead branches are. And I did, by the way, just in case you wonder, yep. This is stuff I printed off from the internet to remind myself what do dead oak branches look like? There we go. I said this the other day, but some amateur artists boast that, and I did it all out of my head. Yeah, believe me, I've done tons of stuff out of my head, but it is not a sign of brilliance or genius. It's usually a sign of laziness, to tell you the truth. And I congratulate you on all the wonderful images that you do have in your head. But if you are drawing out of your head, then your head is getting smaller. Whereas when you look at something and copy it, your brain's getting bigger. And of course, I'm not speaking literally here. But That's probably just about enough for you to see. Let me pull up here's my great horned owl again. Using this technique, actually using any subtractive technique, allows you to achieve a modeled, rounded form more quickly than any other technique. Okay, I'm going to hang up here and just... Hello friends, I just went to my phone to turn off the episode and discovered that it had turned off itself. So I don't know how much of the last episode got transmitted, got broadcast, so I'm going to continue then. So as you can see, I've covered the entire painting with an oil wash. Dried it with a hair dryer in 5 minutes, and then I'm coming back with erasers and lifting out the oil wash with erasers. So basically the top half of this illustration is finished and the bottom half has yet to be done. I did a lot of good talking in the last episode and I have no idea how much of it was there, so I'll repeat some. I don't want to repeat all of it. Again, I will say this. Let me extol the virtues of negative painting. And that applies to many, many mediums. If you're doing a pencil drawing, you better have an eraser there so you can lift stuff out. If you're doing a charcoal drawing, likewise. If you're doing an oil painting, I hope you're incorporating some scratching or scraping or wiping out in the process of doing your oil painting. Because not erasing, I don't mean that. I'm using erasers, so my brain went there. Because negative painting, a negative technique, does two things. One, it creates a beautiful patina or texture that cannot be replicated any other way. And number two, it achieves realism more quickly than any other technique. And it's not a new or modern invention. The most classic example of lifting out technique is the Mona Lisa. Has an Italian name, it's called sfumato. That's the name for that when you have soft, smoky, fuzzy edges. So a lifting out technique should be a normal part of your vocabulary if you're a normal person. I say that because I can think of a couple friends of mine who are fantastic artists and painters and do not use much lifting out. So every rule, the name of my book that I'm working on is called The Breakable Laws of Painting, right? Every law can be broken. But you need to know what the laws are before you break them. If you don't know what they are, you're probably just screwing up. That's my line. I'm sticking with it. If you don't know what the rules are, you're probably just messing up. I'm very tickled, by the way. I'm very happy with how this sky is turning out. Delightful texture. And I've still got 2 layers to go on it yet, so I'm not sure exactly what it'll look like, but it's nice to have it working already. I'm not panicking, hoping it's going to turn out. I'm feeling pretty confident, like, dang, that is going to look fantastic. Come in. I have a grandchild knocking on the door. Sounds like Izzy. Hey, Izzy Bomb. Yes, I am broadcasting right now, but you can come in. Izzy is 6.5.
And I'm all blue today.
And you're all blue.
Even my underwear are blue. My shoes are blue. My bracelet is blue.
How about your teeth?
They're white.
How about your eyes? They're blue.
They're brown.
They're brown.
Wait, are they blue? Yeah, they're brown.
So I'm just about done with this episode, Izzy. I'm showing these people how I'm erasing. Does that look cool?
Uh-huh.
With every layer, it looks cooler. Every layer the image gets more fascinating.
Well, it might be a good thing to me because when the last time, a minute ago, I saw you were done with your video.
Yeah.
A minute ago, and then you started a new one. I was like, oh.
Yep.
Ew.
Yep.
Well, I'm gonna trace this.
Okay.
Look.
Okay.
I
Okay, since he's doing all that talking, let me point you at him so you can see. Okay, wave, Izzy. Thanks, big guy.
Hello. Hello.
Let me zoom in just a little bit here, and I'll try to stay in field of vision. Yeah, let me tackle these feathers over here so you can see me do just a little bit more, then I'll let you go. So the good news is with each layer, using this CF paint technique, with each layer, the realism increases. This technique definitely follows my oft-given advice that artists creep up on their subject matter little by little. The painting it ain't over till it's over, or it ain't finished till it's finished. And so many times, amateurs or beginners or emerging artists, they feel, I understand their psyche, they feel a little bit nervous that, oh man, this painting might not turn out. So that nervousness drives them to finish prematurely. That is, they're in a hurry to get to a degree of finish on every area of the painting before they should. When in fact, the best paintings are the product of good process. So what you should be focusing on, I believe, as an artist, is not the product, but the process. Discover, develop, learn a good process. This is a classic example. This is not my technique. I didn't invent this. CF Payne did. But it is a very definite process. I have it broken down into 9 phases, or 9, maybe even 10 now, I can't remember. 9 or 10 phases, 9 or 10 stages, and 5 or 6 literal layers. So that's what you call process. And at no point do I panic and think, oh man, I hope this thing turns out, and thereby rush ahead, rush to judgment, if you will. No, I take my time, work it out one step at a time, and I'm happy to say each layer of the process increases similitude, or realism, as most people would call it. Okay, that's good enough. I'll leave you there. Next episode, I believe, will be on Facebook. Thanks so much for watching.